What's the scene or the line that you've written in anything that you're fond of the most? Or you mentioned it might all come from Lucas.
Yeah, well, you know, yeah, it will come from Lucas. Lucas is criticizing his true love for being a cheerleader. And she's excited because they go to away games and, you know, they get to sleep over somewhere, be on the bus and have all that kind of fun. And he criticizes it, and she says, well, you're in the band, aren't you? And he says, yeah. He says, well, you go to away games? Yeah. But the band doesn't have fun there. So when somebody wants to say, I'm not doing that, it's, sorry, dude, the band does not have fun there. So I really enjoyed that.
Has there been a script that's turned out to be the most frustrating or disappointing, and why? I
don't have good karma in getting directors. A lot of writers do, and their careers are very different than mine has been. Dick Donner was the only director who did justice.
Who did The Omen?
Who did The Omen. It was the only movie that was better than the screenplay that I wrote. It goes the other way. The most frustrating screenplay, well, My Giant was horribly frustrating. Billy Crystal and I decided to do something with the sensitivity of Il Postino. We were setting it in Europe. It was going to be a touching story about a tragic figure, a man who was too big to fit into this world, and what a wonderful heart he had, and how he could never connect to other people. Mm-hmm. It was called Evangeline originally, because there was a woman he had loved before he grew to this size. And it was terrible. It was good.
Oh, that sounds heartbreaking.
It really was wonderful. It turned out to be, you know, like The Bellboy. It's just kind of ridiculous.
What's the process by which something like My Giant transforms into, goes from that premise to what it ends up being? Like, how many cooks are involved in that kitchen?
You know, vision is all. If you look at any of these movies that are really good, you see that everybody shared a vision. There used to be a camera that focused by taking two lines and lining them up perfectly. If you have different eyesight, 20/40 or something, it's going to be like that, going to be like that, going to be like that. And there's just a blur and no precise intent or way of telling your story. It's a difference in visions.
Mm-hmm. Has there been a screenplay that has most helped your career, and why?
The screenplays that help my career are those that make the rounds before they're made, and people remember that I'm a good writer. Pictures like, you know, My Giant and Dragonfly, you know, even Somebody to Watch Over Me. I could go through that whole list and tell you that there was a little bit of propulsion in my career while people were reading it, but not when the pictures were made.
In terms of being a writer and also a writer-director, when you're directing your own material, are you less precious with the script you have to shoot as a director than you are as a writer working with a different director?
I'm not precious with my words at all. My best lines I have thrown out, even when it's a picture where I'm working with a director and it's my line and it doesn't work. To me, the actor is the final arbiter of what line works. I'm not going to say anything more brilliant than anybody ever said it. The point is, even if it's a good line, if it doesn't work in the mouth of the actor, I don't care if it's right for the story. I don't care if it's right, you know, for the period. I don't care if it's right for his internal life. We'll get it another way. If it's bad in the actor's mouth, kill it. So I do a lot of slashing once we get a cast in one of the movies.
Did you see not so much revising by yourself before it gets turned in? It's more revisions afterwards in terms of the actor's feedback.
I drive everybody crazy because I arrive every morning with pages, and they can see me working on my computer off in the darkness while they're shooting. They say, "Please stop that guy, for God's sake." And they get very furious with it. But what I have found is, in watching the scenes on the floor that they're actually doing now, I said, shit, that line's in the wrong place. This thing can go in a better direction. I'm down there doing and doing. They say, no, please, don't let him do that again.
So it's always evolving for you.
It's always evolving. I will leave a set as a director when somebody says, we've run out of time. When you work with movie stars coming in like Mel Gibson or
Kevin Costner, what's the process there in terms of like getting their feedback and working with, you know, those kind of people? Do you get pressure to change things or keep things the same?
You don't win an argument with a movie star, you just don't. So...
can you bend them to your will with your Jedi mind powers?
The best you can do is say, do one, we'll do it your way, but please do one for me.
The two-take?
Yeah, the two-take, but they're onto that.
Yeah, because now they do the line terribly in the take that you want. They just do the line well.
They just dog it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One actor said to me once, you can never get sued for a bad performance. So
that's true.
On a different note, what's been the most positive working relationship you've had with an actor, writer, director, executive, you know, so far, and why was it so good?
Actors, I've always had happy relationships with. But Tom Hanks was wonderful. Gary Oldman was wonderful. Those relationships often don't last much beyond the movie. I'm sure there are others who I'm not thinking of at this moment.
Was Tom Hanks who Punchline was written for?
No, he was just ripe for it. He was ripe and ready and wanted to show that he could do more in comedy. And Tom has often said, maybe not very recently, probably not, but for a long, long time, he said that's the best thing I've ever done. And it was, when you look at it, you see a different kind of Tom Hanks.
Well, you could have easily cited as a scene, you know, that is a strong example of your work, is the Tom Hanks performance of the eye on the lapel anecdote that he tells from the stage in Punchline. What was the genesis of that? Did that happen to you as well?
My experience, yeah. Oh. In a biology class. I had thought I wanted to be a doctor because when I was young, because it's a very healing profession, but the things that they do to animals made it impossible. Plus the fact I couldn't read very well. But yeah, I was with a female lab partner, and she knew how much I hated this. And when they pithed the frog, cut its head in half so we can see how it lives without a brain, and they do keep living, she took the eyeball on one of those probes and went, boing!
A horrible moment.
And it stuck on me. It stuck right on my neck. And maybe that's what Tom said, too.
Yeah.
I freaked out. I was a girl. You know? I was Eka Mouse. It was very embarrassing.
Well, that moment and the moment with the umbrella and the rain and just the desperation of that performance, was that something that was always in the script?
Him doing Singing in the Rain was always in the script.
The torment in that is so great.
The choreography was totally Tom's, not mine. When I saw what he was doing, he said, no, I don't want to do that. I thought he should imitate Gene Kelly. He said, let me just feel it. Just let me feel the damn thing. And it was awesome. It was basically one take. And we just stood there breathless and watched what he did. It all came from him.
What are the dangers or pressures in terms of working on something like Revelations as a TV miniseries? Did you get pressure from any religious groups, or was there a lot of controversy there?
Religious groups were fascinated with it. When I did the Omen, I was given awards by Christian groups, Catholic
Well, it's very faithful
groups.
to biblical stories.
They love that the Bible was popularized by that. That is brought into the public consciousness. And even the 3 6s, which everybody put on T-shirts and on walls, and Ronald Reagan actually had to change his San Clemente address. Those 3 6s became so powerful. The religious organizations loved that actually the whole world was aware that there was a threat of an apocalypse. They felt the same way about Revelations. Every religious person was appreciative of the fact that it declared that all of the misfortunes in the Bible that are immediately, that foreshadow the end of the world were in play. You know, from, well, right. Everything, the plague and the...
Yeah, there are people that get really excited about the idea that we're living in the end times.
Right, right. And so if that is true, if in fact these are the end times, then Christ is on earth. And there is a nun who believes these are the end times, who goes looking for him. So they loved that. They didn't like that my final message was that the end is in our hands. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were hidden away 3,000 years ago, it was because the people of that time felt the world was coming to an end. Somebody changed that. Something changed that. And certainly we have a response. If the world's ending, it's not because of magic of heaven or hell. It's because we did it. And that was something I wanted to say at the end. And so some of the religionists took issue with that, but they still praised the fact that this was about people sincerely involved with religion.
Doesn't Revelations feel like it was written by some like insane pope, like way after the rest of the Bible was written? It just reads like a separate book of like nightmare hallucinations and acid trips.
I think you're right. I think that's why, yeah. It is the most fascinating book to me of the Bible, that and Psalms.
Did you enjoy the experience on Revelation?
I'll never do television again, if that explains it. That was a chance to
You really
write.
liked it.
It's terrible. You have all the responsibility as an executive producer and creator of doing the impossible, but finally not the authority. The network comes down and tells you what you're allowed to put in and what you have to take out and when you're finished. And even if you're short-sheeted, you don't have the money to do it, tough luck. They were ultimately the enemy of creativity. And it had an effect on everything. I loved it because I was writing very personal things, believe it or not. I had had a tragedy in my life, which I won't describe, but it had made me look into the sky and recite words that I wasn't even sure who said. It was, "Father, why have thou forsaken me?" I'm a pretty good guy, and something really awful happened. And I realized that I didn't believe in God at all. And there I was, you know, in the foxhole, saying, "What have I done?" And I was able to create the character of a scientist whose child was lost, killed, who was looking for some meaning, some belief that there was a higher power.
Very powerful.
I said a lot of things that were very personal to me.
Right. And do you think did that go into kind of the overall experience when it became not a pleasant experience, and why you wouldn't?
It did. It was an homage to
something very personal.
Somebody I loved. And I found out there were other people on the set too who had, well, okay, I lost one of my kids, who had lost their children. And I saw the sound mixer standing, there was a little graveside scene, and he was crying. And he said, "I lost my kid." And the production designer overheard it. We had all three lost a child. And I said to him, "I would have never known it. You walk around, you laugh, you have a life. And I would have never known you're suffering it." And he said, "Same with you, same with you." And we said, "How often do you think of it?" "Every minute of every day."
Well, I think it's utterly heroic for artists to take really, painful episodes from their life and share it with the potential audience, because it means something to them, but it may mean something or inspire something for so many other people that have either gone through something similar, or is it kind of therapeutic to also get it out there and share it as a story?
It was powerful for that reason. I don't know if it was therapeutic, but it had a power beyond just writing words. Then finally, in the end, I answered the question when I spoke to a religionist of why was it. By the way, I'm Jewish. I'm coming to this as a student, not as a teacher. I finally found out the answer from a religious scholar. I said, "Why was Christ asking? He was in on the game. He was part of the whole plan."
Right.
And his answer, "Why hast thou forsaken me?" And he said it was not his to know, because he was a man.
Very powerful themes.
Yeah.
Do you think, this goes back to an earlier question, but after all your years in the business, is there less of a welcome reception for these kind of, emotional and powerful themes? Or do they have to be kind of like ambassadored by powerhouse producers or movie stars that can get them through the system?
Well, for better and for worse, people look to me for that kind of material.
I can imagine.
And when they have a script that's not working and it's about something personal, sensitive, emotionally painful,
spiritual,
they make a pass at me because I've done that. But also, it in some way limits me in the material that I'm shown. But that's okay. Most of the very personal things have been specs anyway.
Have you ever been rewritten down the road in a process, and what was that like?
I've been very lucky in that way. I was fired from Revelations. Did a great pilot. I was working on all the other episodes. And somebody at the network just didn't think it looked like television. And I was quite proud of that. And so they fired me and hired a television writer. and they realized it was a terrible mistake. And it's very humiliating. I don't know how writers can stand it when they've poured everything onto the page and the studio gets, and the next thing they know, there's another writer.
You know, a lot of times it's a real horror story that you almost can't believe that they're not even told until they're notified by the Writers Guild or someone.
Well, I actually did have an experience like that. This was a very bad experience. There was a script. It made seven different writers had tried to do it. They brought it to me. I thought I could do it, and I did it. And everybody loved it except one person who had control. And when I was brought in for a notes meeting to tell me all the things that had to be done to it, they actually had another writer working in the same building. They had already hired. So I went home for a weekend. And
that's like cheating on your wife in the same motel.
That's exactly
that she's staying in.
That's how I felt. And when I went back with a whole stack of pages to try and satisfy them and still keep it within the vision that I wanted, the meeting had been canceled and I hadn't been told.
Wow.
Nobody was there. I wound up driving around trying to get everybody on the phone, wound up on a park bench being told by my agent that I'd been replaced. So, it's a tough business.
What's the best piece of advice or insight you've ever received, and who gave it to you?
The only kind of advice I got was from people who were afraid that I was walking into the treacherous waters and that I would never make a living at it. So I was warned by.
So that was bad advice, kind of.
That was bad advice. I did have one bit of good advice about directing: wear comfortable shoes.
Was directing something you knew you were always going to progress to, or did it come? How did it come about? That transition?
It came about because sitting alone behind a computer is a very lonely thing to do. When I had a house full of kids and animals, getting out from behind my computer was the beginning of a party of some sort, an adventure. They were all home and waiting for fun, or waiting with complaints or whatever it was. Once my family was grown and flown, when I turned off the computer, the silence was deafening, and I knew I had to create another party for myself. Because as a writer, it's like being in the mail order business. You work, you work, you work, you work, you hand it in, and they go all off and have a party, and you're not invited. So writing is very important because it brings me into contact with people in a way that I love, in a nurturing way.
Are you ever in the position of just cold pitching to studios, or is there always a deal in place first, or do you actually go in and do the proverbial pitch meeting?
I have not reached that rarefied atmosphere where they simply pull your name and you've got the job. I have to pitch. And it's something that I have a love-hate relationship with. It's like doing an interview. Maybe I'll be great, maybe I'll be horrible. Being a writer writing is kind of like lovemaking. You never know if you're any good unless somebody tells you. It's for someone else to say. But sometimes I pitch well. I really enjoy the theater of it all coming together. And I love playing to an audience that's loving it. But I've gone into a couple of pitches that I knew they just weren't interested in from the get-go, and it feels terrible to do it. Taking notes on a screenplay, I'm the best, because anybody, even not a creative person, can put their finger on something that's not working. They don't know why, and they may say it in a brutal way or in a stupid way, but you better read those notes, because everybody who has something to say about your script probably has something you can learn from.
That's interesting. So your role with notes is kind of interpretive. Like you see, it's not their job to pinpoint, but they're articulating the best they can. I'll interpret what they're really trying to say.
Exactly.
And then you come back at them with the fix.
Yeah. This is how I fixed it. I see what you're talking about. I want to fix it this way in this scene instead of that scene. Has
the process of even getting notes changed a lot from when you started doing this to now?
Yeah, it used to be like one person would give you notes. Now it's a committee. You can get notes that say, I hated the scene where so-and-so, and on the same, a page later, my favorite scene is so-and-so. So you get these notes that are not speaking in one voice, and very often they won't take responsibility for who said what. I'll call and say, well, whose note was this? Or I'll say it in the room, and they all don't want to be identified with a note. Yeah, the committee kind of thing. You find people who really are good having to tolerate in the notes that they know are bad. Just for politics' sake within the studio. They know the writer's going to get some bad notes. So you have to sift through those as well.
Do they read kind of like cookie cutter memos these days in terms of, even if one person gives it to you, you feel like it's been written by a lot of different people? Or do they literally come from 10 different people?
Oh, no. It's all in one stack of pages. Sometimes you get, 2 pages of notes. Sometimes you get 7 pages of notes. Yeah, it's not uncommon for studios to have a whole legion of, usually they're younger people, actually breaking their back on these notes and then having them kind of climb the chain. Yeah, and it's kind of bad. It's like a movie critic. They can't get noticed unless they say something wicked. This reminds me of the Beverly Hillbillies on acid or some shit like that.
Which I would go see.
Yeah, I would go see too. That was too smart for it. But you find this, the guys who are maybe destined to climb the ladder, piping up in a negative way. Even in a story meeting, you get a voice from the back of the room. Yeah, I really love the way he's so-and-so. Wasn't that a coincidence? And you look over at somebody who's in this room for the first time,
right,
swaggering and taking pot shots when there's no way I can defend myself, nor should I. So you get a lot of notes like that. Some kid trying to prove he's smarter than the writer rather than trying to help the writer.
In terms of pitching, what do you bring to the meeting? Do you bring the leave behind or the thing you read off of? Is it cards for you or is it a document?
It's a real performance.
Okay.
I figure it's going to go on for 45 minutes and I have got to know without referring to notes so I can hold everybody's eyes where I'm going. I memorize it. Do it in the car on the way there. Get there early. Do it in the car in the parking lot. Because I have some savory phrases that will get me out of trouble, that will go over thin ice, that will distract them. And occasionally I'll go in there with just a few 5x7 cards. So if I wind up going, I can land on something that's going to be pithy and is going to sound like I know what I'm doing. But no, I don't go in there shy at all. I go in there ready to dance.
And that's worked out for you mostly in the past?
Mostly it has, yeah.
Great. Well, we want to thank today's subject, David Seltzer, for being with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for being here as well. Please remember to check out the other great interviews in our series with industry pros. And remember, it all starts with you. The next written by credit could be yours. I'm Mike DeLuca.